Hey there, how you doing? It's Thursday, March 9th, 2023, and tonight's topic, I'm going to get a little bit political and philosophical tonight. I'm going to talk about Trump, and the title of this is Trump, Conservative, RINO, or Agnostic. And so hang in there with me. And before I get started with that, I gotta update a few things. One is I've mentioned that every Friday morning I'm on Chris Ryan's show and WGIR. Tomorrow I'll be on at 8:20 a.m. So tune in every Friday morning. And it was kind of funny because last week Chris played. They get messages, voice messages, people calling and complain, and they kind of make a joke out of it. And last week he played one of the voice messages that was complaining about me. So no one is immune if you're out there saying things. So anyway, tune in tomorrow, 8:20 a.m. on WGIR, the Chris Ryan show. The other thing I want to give you an update on, I think I've mentioned to everybody, my son Thomas, my youngest child, who's a second lieutenant in the Army, graduated from West Point last year, is in Army Ranger School. And today I received a note from him and a postcard. Here's the note. It's pretty short. They don't have much time there, and they don't have their phones. Body is tired, not eating a ton, but focused on getting through. Love, Tom. And then I also today got a postcard from him. It's kind of nice, and with his addresses. So I want to give a shout out to all my friends in New Hampshire. There's a Facebook page for his Ranger class, RC 5-23 Ranger School class, and some of my friends and the New Hampshire Advantage Pack volunteers. They are participating in the prayer board on this Facebook page, and I want to thank everybody out there who's praying for Second Lieutenant Thomas Messner. It's an exciting time. The other update I want to give, I talked last week about Ukraine. My light keeps going out, and I charged it, so oh well, we may have to go without it. I talked about Ukraine last week, and sort of one theme of my talk was, Ukraine is being depopulated with all the refugees, and I think a country that was maybe 40 million people is probably now 23 million, maybe 20 million people, with all the refugees that have left, the ones in the eastern part that's under Russia's control, and that also Ukraine's infrastructure was being destroyed, and what's going to be left of this country. And I think we, the United States, ought to jump into negotiating a peace settlement here and not continuing to escalate. This country is going to be destroyed. And today, if you heard the news, the Russians horribly fired, I heard 80 missiles all over Ukraine, hitting infrastructure, hitting civilian targets. It's awful stuff. This is awful stuff. And, and quite frankly, I don't think it's going to stop until there's some sort of peace negotiation that we in the United States need to get in the middle of to make that happen. But that was last week's topic, and I'll do an update on Ukraine in a few weeks. I think it's strategically and the geopolitics of the world, is likely a defining moment of our times, what's going on in Ukraine. But today's topic is, thank you, Anne Marie, for the congratulations to Thomas. Today's topic is Trump, conservative, RINO, or agnostic. And, and I wanted to talk about this because one of the things that is happening and it's coming primarily started with this iteration of what a RINO is, has kind of started with Donald Trump. And first of all, those of you who don't know, RINO, R-I-N-O, is Republican in name only. And now it's sort of, we're at a place where if you don't agree with Donald Trump, you're called a RINO. And there's people calling me a RINO. And those who know where I stand politically know that I'm quite frankly a very passionate conservative. And we're going to talk some about what a conservative is too. So this idea of RINO in name only, and it gets thrown around. If someone speaks out against Trump, you're a RINO, they're told. And so I've done some reading on that, and I've done some reading on what it is to be a conservative. And first of all, on this whole thing with RINO, Republican in name only, based on my reading, and I got to tell you, when I read stuff, I do a lot of reading on the internet, searching, and I'm at the point with the amount of information out there that I think I'm going to hire a researcher because I'm definitely at the point where you can't believe much of what you read at first glance on the internet. That you got to do a deep dive, and it takes a ton of time. At any rate, but what I was able to find was the first time that RINO was used, Republican name only, you won't believe this, was actually against Teddy Roosevelt. It seemed like that was the first time it was used. Against Teddy Roosevelt, who's considered by many to be one of the best presidents we ever had, and he was a Republican. And then it, basically, as during the Clinton years, what I tell you, you will never get my vote right now. All right, Jim McConnell, whoever you are. I'm not running for anything, Jim, so I hope you don't vote for me because I'm not running for anything. And you spelt RINO, R-H-I-N-O. That's not how it spells. RINO that's the rhinoceros. RINO's R-I-N-O, Jim. So that's one of the problems we have, and I say to people, everyone should be opinionated, but why don't you try to be informed and opinionated instead of just opinionated? At any rate, as the parties, and really starting with the Clinton years, started going to their corners and fighting things out, that's when a lot of conservatives started calling moderate Republicans RINOs, Republicans in name only. And, there was a time, like in the 80s, and even beyond that, in the 90s, that there were liberal Republicans and conservative Democrats. But it sort of evolved into this, go to your corner conservatives, and anyone who isn't a strong conservative is therefore deemed to be a RINO, which then, in my opinion, has evolved to, if you don't agree with Donald Trump, you're then considered a RINO. So, which, in my opinion, makes no sense. Makes no sense whatsoever. And here's the danger of this, and if we conservatives are going to take the approach that, you must be a strict conservative in order to get one's support, and a lot of times that mindset, people don't even go vote for someone who may not be as conservative as you like. We're not going to win elections. Republicans are not going to win elections. And here's the interesting thing about this. I looked at this, the latest Gallup poll, and this is interesting. 36% of Americans identify as conservative. 37%, and those two numbers tend to be pretty close, or not identify as moderate. And only 25% identify as liberal. So the point I'm making is, if we Republicans and conservative Republicans can go back to a more of a big tent mentality, to invite people in, even those who might be moderate, we got a much better chance of winning elections. Much better chance. And, so I just don't see all this RINO stuff as very helpful to the Republican Party. And I think we conservatives, ought to take the long view. And, if we get Republicans in power, we're more likely to be able to persuade people to become more conservative. Versus if we take the position, I'm not supporting anyone who's not a conservative, and I'm not going to vote, and we lose elections, we're not in power, we're not going to be able to persuade people. And I think now Trump has turned that whole RINO term into one of his insults that he throws at people. Here's a great question from Elizabeth Shannon. Let me just see it. He was a great president. You think we can handle? I don't see the rest of your question, Elizabeth. I'll talk about that. I think Trump in 2015, 2016, when he was running, and his irreverence and his outsider and, and his insults, it was different. It was, quite frankly, to many of us, including me, a breath of fresh air to have somebody not talk in the DC speak. And I think that's why he won. I mean, he was different. And I don't think, okay, Elizabeth, I'll get to that. So, I think sadly, I think Trump, if he would have sort of dampened his ego and got away from the insults and got away from the Twitter account, he could have still tweeted, but in a more, a more adult way. I think he would have won re-election easy in 2020, even with the pandemic. And we grew tired. We grew tired of, of the Trump show, of the insults and the name calling and all that. We grew very, very tired of it. And especially in New Hampshire, we grew tired of it. And so, and so the question is, all right, is Trump a conservative? And, and I said conservative, RINO, or agnostic. Well, what do they mean about agnostic? Quite frankly, many politicians don't have a philosophical compass, political philosophical compass. They don't. They are going to change how they see things philosophically to win. Most politicians are like that. I don't know if most, but many are like that. And so what is Trump? Is he a conservative? There's no question whatsoever. Many of Trump's policies, which I believe were very good, very, very good, and I liked a lot, were conservative. A lot of conservative policies. I mean, pro-life, his selections for the Supreme Court were justices who believed in the Constitution as written and didn't believe in this expanding the Constitution. And sort of the modern day view of conservatism is small government, reduce regulation, get out of the people's way, encourage empowerment of people, entrepreneurship of people, and so you've got that piece, sort of the political, fiscal, freedom, conservative part, and then you've got sort of the spiritual conservative part, and traditional values and so forth. And listen, so for that reason, a lot of Trump's policies, fit into those boxes. Not all of them, but a lot of them, and that's why I like them. But I think, Trump has demonstrated that he really doesn't embody a lot of the conservative values. And this light changing you see behind me, the TV's on, so that's what's going on there. He doesn't really embody a lot of conservative values. Let me just give you a recent example. I mean, I didn't watch the whole CPAC speech. I didn't watch very much of CPAC, but I saw some blurbs of it where Trump was saying, "I am your warrior," and all that. And then he said, "I am your retribution." And I thought, what in the world? Retribution? It is not a conservative value. Certainly not a Christian value that one seeks retribution. I don't know what exactly he meant by that. I interpreted it to mean that he's retribution. He's gonna be retribution against the Democrats. And again, it's not opening the tent and opening your arms and inviting people in, kind of approach. And it's certainly not a traditional conservative value. And that kind of, I'm going to get back at you, is not a winning strategy. And Elizabeth, back to your question, would you support Trump in 2024? He was a great president, but you think we can handle the stress he brings? Great question. I would say a couple things. I don't think Trump was a great president. I think he implemented some very, very good policies, that did a lot of great things for the country. I guess one could say, well, that defines what a great president is. I think it's more than that. I don't think Trump's a great leader. I don't think he's a great leader at all. In fact, I don't think he's a very good leader at all. I mean, as a leader, you don't call names to people you hired, and then whoever, if they quit or you fire them or whatever, the name calling is bad leadership, and I mean, I wouldn't want to go to work for Trump. I mean, I wouldn't want to go to work and if something happens that suddenly you get called names and disparaged. I mean, that's not good leadership. It's not great leadership. And so I think to be a great president, you got to be a great leader. And I think his judgment on a lot of things is bad. I mean, when he would go into these rants and disparage people and call them names, a lot of times it was people that in his judgment he hired, and when he hired them, he said how great they were. So you got to say, wait a minute, Mr. President, you hired a lot of these people, and then they quit or get fired, and you say how bad they are. And doesn't that reflect on your judgment? So I don't think he was a great president. I think he had a lot of great policies, and I think those other areas where he wasn't a great president in leadership and judgment and how he treated people and compassion and accountability is why he lost the election, and so would I support Trump in 2024? At this point I'd have to say no. I don't know that Donald Trump cares if I support him or not, quite frankly. He did endorse me in 2016, and I was very thankful and appreciative of that. And that certainly doesn't mean I need to support him every time he runs. But I don't think I mean, maybe something will change and I could change my mind. I'm not trying to hedge on it, but I don't think he's going to change, and I don't think, I'm not going to support him in 2024. Can we handle the stress he brings? Probably not. I mean, I don't think so, so the bottom line is I don't think he's a conservative. I think he misuses the word RINO, and that term changes over time, so that he's really turned it into a negative, attacking kind of word, and then his followers pick up on it. And I've already been called RINO tonight once, and I suspect as I go through these messages, I'll see it over and over and over again. But I think Trump is really sort of your classic politician who's an agnostic. And I believe that if Donald Trump thought he could win the election for president by being a liberal Republican right now, he would be a liberal Republican. So I just think that's who he is. I think his ego drives him, that he and quite frankly, he'll do anything politically he needs to do to win. Thank you for agreeing, Elizabeth. So I think he's an agnostic and politically, and I just don't think. Listen, the only way he wins the primary is if a lot of candidates get in the race and they stay in the race, and then all the other vote is diluted amongst 6, 7, 8 candidates. In that case, Donald Trump wins the primary. And I hope the Republican Party and these candidates are wise enough that if they don't get any traction, they need to get out. Just like the Democrats did in 2020. I mean, Joe Biden got his butt kicked in the New Hampshire primary. And he went to South Carolina, and what's his name endorsed him? I can't think of his name. The congressman from South Carolina endorsed him. He won big in South Carolina. The field cleared except for Bernie. Everyone got out but Bernie. Everyone got around supporting Biden. And I think Bernie cut a deal, as we all know. And if you watch that last debate between Bernie and Biden, my opinion, Bernie was holding back. So we need to do that on the Republican side. And I hope a lot of people get in now. And then if you don't get any traction, get out. And let's rally around somebody other than Trump. I don't think Trump can win a general election. And we need a candidate. Those numbers I talked about at the beginning, 37% moderate, 36% conservative. We need a candidate who can get all the conservatives out to vote and tap into a goodly percentage of those moderates and connect with them. And quite frankly, that's one of the strengths that Chris Sununu has as governor of our state. I mean, he's able to connect with the moderates and keep enough of the conservatives to win pretty big. And that's the kind of politician we need. Now listen, there's a lot of things that Chris Sununu does that I don't agree with. There's even more things that he does do that I do agree with. And because of that, I would support Chris Sununu. I don't know if I'd support him for president. I'm not saying that, but I like him. I think he's doing a good job. He and I differ on a lot of things, but we agree on many more things. And that's how we conservatives need to start thinking, is we're better off with a Republican with whom we agree on many things instead of a Democrat who would get elected if we don't participate and support somebody that we might not fully enjoy or like. So that's it for tonight. We'll see how many nasty grams I get because of it, but that's okay. If you have questions, email me at corkymessner@gmail.com. Again, I'm on WGIR tomorrow morning at 8:20 with Chris Ryan. Don't know what we're going to talk about. I usually, Elizabeth, I think Mike Pompeo is a very viable candidate. So 8:20 a.m. tomorrow with Chris Ryan on WGIR. And, we're getting, these things get watched over the next day or two or 3 or 4 or even longer a lot of times. So I'm going to keep doing these as long as people are watching them. So at any rate, thank you. Have a great evening and say a prayer for young Second Lieutenant Thomas Messner while he's at Ranger School. And God bless all of you. Good night.